All right, welcome to the attack on Pearl Harbor. We are looking at the why, so the motivations of Japan to attack a United States naval base in Hawaii, and looking at the effects, what happened in response to that attack. This image is of the Pearl Harbor naval base in Hawaii. So let's do a little bit of background here. Why did Japan attack Pearl Harbor? To understand the why, we need to do some backstory. So, if you remember back to the age of imperialism, that scramble for Africa, Japan was not part of the age of imperialism. If you looked back at your information, you would see that, we had like Great Britain, France, Spain, Portugal, Netherlands, areas like that, but not Japan. And so Japan realizes in the mid 1800s that they could not beat powerful nations, powerful modern nations, and a nation like the United States of America because they did not have all these colonies under imperialism to, build up their wealth, build up their power in terms of land. Japan is a series of islands, so they have limited space, they have limited resources. So, they're not as powerful. However, they have the same power hunger that all these other nations did. Okay, so still some more of the backstory. So there's a convention of Kanagawa on March 31st, 1854. And signing at this convention, it opens up Japanese ports for trade with the United States. So this is a good thing for Japan. They had been isolated. They were not part of imperialism. And so this opens up, resources for them to trade with the United States. Um, and because the United States agreed to trade with them, then other countries like Great Britain, Russia, France, and the Netherlands also agreed to trade with them. And in response to the trade, Japan starts becoming more industrialized and modern. All right, so what's going on here still in the backstory? So, as they start to industrialize and modernize, they start a policy of imperialism. They have to get to places that have not already been colonized or conquered by the other countries. So, you can see this little timeline here. 1894, Japan goes to war with China. 1895, Japan invades Korea and the island of Formosa. And over the next 40 years, Japan takes land in Asia, the Pacific Ocean, so the islands of the Pacific Ocean, and they take these from China, Russia, and Germany. So they're doing their own policy of imperialism. In fact, they wanted to have all the control of the Pacific Ocean, of their part of the Pacific Ocean. That was their goal. 1931, they invade Manchuria. 1937, they start an all out war to take over China. And 2 years later, that war is at a stalemate. And we should remember that stalemate means no one is winning, no one is making any progress. But that's a little timeline of Japan's policy of imperialism and how they were trying to gain power and wealth. Just a little image of Japan's invasion of China to kind of give you a visual about what's going on. So, what's going on in America during this time period? Well, as you can see from this political cartoon, America was, besides, we were trading with other countries, but besides trade, we were really practicing a policy of isolationism, which was not getting involved in other countries' problems. We're focused on our country, focused on stabilizing our country after World War One, building our country up. Um, the trade, of course, was a good economic decision, but our isolation, our staying inside our own little sandcastle, was to not make alliances and to not get involved in things like the Japanese China War. So that's what the United States is doing during this time period. Okay, so here we go. So Pearl Harbor is located in Oahu, Hawaii, United States. It is a naval base for the U.S. It has shallow waters. So an enemy naval attack was impossible. The submarines and battleships could not come into this area. And until 1941, Pearl Harbor was a peaceful, civilized island. Um, it was not an official state yet, but it was part of the United States, as it had a military base and troop station there. And I think we had made it a colony maybe by then. Okay, so a little background on Pearl Harbor. Okay, so what's going on with Japan attacking? Because we're trading with Japan, right? Well, when Japan invaded both China and Indochina, the United States kind of pulls out of our policy of isolationism and gets involved a little bit. And the US demands, remember we talked about that with Hitler demanding things, the US demands that Japan withdraw from China and Indochina. Well, Japan did not respond to that demand very well, and they did not withdraw. So, September 1940, the United States decides we are not going to trade, we're not going to export anymore these very important resources that Japan needs: oil, steel, scrap iron, and aviation fuel. So we place an embargo on those exports. So we say, we're not going to send you these things anymore. So that angers Japan. And Japan thinks that attacking the United States would be an easy win, um, and a territory with lots of land and resources to rule once they were victorious. So the embargo, the trade embargo against Japan, starts to hurt Japan's economy and their ability to make war. So they're upset with the United States' decision to stop trading with them. And when I went to Hawaii a couple of years ago and went to Pearl Harbor and the museum, this is a image that's there, and it shows you the resources that Japan was really interested in the Pacific Islands, in the areas of the Pacific. So, the rubber, the iron, the oil, and the tin. Because Japan is just a series of islands, they don't have lots of these resources. Um, so, just a nice image to remind us of what they needed and how they felt like if they conquered all of these areas. So, you history buffs would know, it was called island hopping, their policy of island hopping, where they would go and conquer one island and then another. And as they conquered these, they were getting closer and closer to Hawaii, the United States of America, and feeling very confident in their ability to attack us. So, the basic reason is Japan attacks Pearl Harbor because our President Roosevelt stops trading with them, hurts their economy, makes them mad. The U.S. had made a law stopping oil trade to Japan because of Japan's invasion of China and their refusal to leave. So we stop trading with them. Japan attacks our naval base. So what do you think is going to happen now that Japan has attacked the U.S. naval base at Pearl Harbor? And this is a real photograph from that time period. I will pause on the Ed Puzzle, and this will be a time for you to answer this question. This is another image of these are Japanese airplanes, and they are dropping bombs on the battleships. This is pretty much the next day. This is a headline in the Honolulu paper. Okay. Oahu bombed by Japanese airplanes, 6 known dead, 21 injured at emergency hospital. Hundreds see the city bombed. In fact, when we visited, a man who had been 6 years old at the time toured us around and told us of his experience of seeing the Japanese airplanes fly over. And he said he could even see the pilots' faces as they were flying back. And there were 2 waves of attacks very early in the morning. So it was a surprise attack on Pearl Harbor. Soldiers were just waking up for the morning. The ones that were on night shift were just switching over to go to bed. And so the first wave, I think, was at like 6 in the morning, and very much a surprise attack. So here is Isoroku Yamamoto, very famous general under the emperor at the time. or he was the emperor, I think. Yeah, at the time. So this is a very famous quote that we know in response to the attack on Pearl Harbor. The translation into English is he says, I fear all we have done is to awaken a sleeping giant and fill him with a terrible resolve. World War II is going on at this time, and the United States is not involved with our policy of isolationism. We are not involved. Okay. So um, I'm going to pause and I want you to tell me what you think he means by this. Who is the sleeping giant that they have filled with a terrible resolve? So hopefully you put that we, the United States of America, is the terrible giant. So the response, what were the effects of this, is our United States Congress declares war on Japan, Germany, and Italy on December 8th. So it ends isolationism. The attack on Pearl Harbor arouses and united Americans and to join into this war. And this attack on us, this unprovoked attack on us, brought us together as a nation to enter this war that nothing else could have brought us together like this to enter this war. So the big effect is the United States enters World War II. So Pearl Harbor, December 7th, 1941. Also, you history buffs may hear this called a day that will live in infamy. Here's a very informative um, piece of information. So there were 200 aircraft, 5 battleships, 3 destroyers, and 7 other ships that were sunk or severely damaged by the Japanese. 2,400 Americans were killed, 1,200 were wounded. President Franklin Roosevelt, he's the one that said this, said yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. So the bombing, the biggest effect of the bombing was it causes the United States to enter World War II. And then this is the image of the memorial over the USS Arizona that was sunk. In fact, when we were there, part of the tour, they tell you that there is still oil coming out of this battleship, even all of these years later. All right, so we're going to stop here. You're going to have answered your questions, and then you will go to your task 3.